New U.S. sanctions imposed on the 10th of January have left nearly 500,000 metric tons of Russian oil products stranded on sanctioned tankers.
The head of NATO has announced that the alliance will enhance its military presence in the Baltic Sea.
Panama, home to the world's largest ship registry, is known for providing an easy flag for tankers. Russia loves these seas. The Barents and Norwegian Seas, the North Atlantic Ocean, and then a huge route to the Caribbean Sea are among the strategic areas sailed by Russia's shadow fleet. The shadow fleet consists mostly of old tankers purchased used by non-transparent entities with addresses in non-sanctioning countries, such as the United Arab Emirates or the Marshall Islands, and flying flags in places such as Gabon or the Cook Islands. From time to time, this shadowy fleet can even be seen in sea areas stretching as far as the South Atlantic. Shipping analysts have detected discharges everywhere from Thailand to Vietnam, Italy, and Mexico, all linked to the shadow fleet. Moreover, tankers of Russia's shadow fleet pass through busy shipping corridors such as the Red Sea and the Panama Canal, which means that any serious accident could disrupt international trade routes. Experts believe it is only a matter of time before the tankers of this shadowy fleet suffer a catastrophe that would cause massive environmental and economic destruction. The risk of an oil spill is very high, but Russia is downplaying the danger. The situation raises a global dilemma. How can democratic countries cut Moscow's revenues while avoiding disastrous consequences? Panama must have thought about this for a long time. Most recently, the Panamanian wing of the Panamanian parliament decided that Russia's shadow fleet faced an unbelievable fate. What was Panama's move against the shadow fleet? What will be the fate of the shadow fleet, which ranks first among Putin's sources of income? Which seas will the Russian shadow fleet sail after Panama's surprise move? For answers to all these critical questions and much more, here we go. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like to be informed about our content. Let's take a look at how Panama hunted down the Russian shadow fleet. Panama shook Russian oil exports by canceling the registrations of dozens of sanctioned vessels. The Panama Maritime Authority is in the process of canceling the registration of 128 ships as part of the operation against blacklisted vessels. Experts say Panama's decision is part of a crackdown on ships that have allowed Russia to circumvent Western sanctions on its oil exports through a shadow fleet with secret ties to Moscow. The sanctions were imposed to punish Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Russian side was trying to circumvent these sanctions with the shadow fleet, but Panama blocked hundreds of ships of the Russian shadow fleet, frustrating the Kremlin's illicit financing efforts. Ramon Franco, the Panama Maritime Authority's Director General for Merchant Shipping, said that after promising last year to find blacklisted ships, at least 70 tankers have been removed and dozens more will follow, resulting in up to $2 million in lost revenue. According to Ramon Franco, with the latest decision in the addition of 128 more tankers, Panama has succeeded in blocking a total of nearly 200 Russian tankers. Mr. Franco emphasizes that Panama will not be left behind by the current challenges facing the industry, including sanctions. He added that Panama made changes last October that shortened the time it takes to deregister ships from 6 months to a week. The UK-based organization, which is part of the Razom We Stand campaign calling for tougher measures against Russia's fossil fuel exports, has also weighed in on the issue. The UK-based organization welcomed Panama's move, but said that the Central American country needs to go further. Imogen Pater, director of Friends of Ukraine in the UK, said in a statement that Panama's role in sinking Russia's shadow fleet was welcome, but the country should take further steps to ensure that it is not used by Moscow to avoid sanctions. In a briefing note published on Thursday by partners such as Razom We Stand and Friends of Ukraine in the UK, Russia's shadow fleet consists of at least 848 tankers, 463 crude oil vessels, and 385 oil product vessels. Of these, only 338 vessels had been sanctioned by at least one of the major sanctioning countries: the EU, the UK, Canada, and the US. According to Razom We Stand, only 25 vessels were sanctioned by all 4 jurisdictions. As we have seen, Panama was the last to block this massive shadow fleet, which has severely affected the Kremlin's oil financing sources. In addition to Panama, Germany should also be given credit for this. The oil tanker Eventine, believed to be part of Russia's efforts to evade sanctions, was towed to safer waters by a German tugboat after it was discovered drifting in rough seas off the Baltic coast in January. German customs authorities have seized the Panama flag tanker Eventine, which has been anchored off Germany's Baltic Sea coast since January. The vessel is believed to be part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet of old tankers of uncertain ownership and security practices, which Western governments say Moscow has resorted to avoid sanctions and keep oil revenues flowing. Security sources told German media outlets that a confiscation order has been issued by the General Directorate of Customs, and that the tanker, as well as about 100,000 tons of crude oil worth over 40 million euros, will become German property. The German government decided to confiscate the vessel after it was included in Russia's shadow fleet in February, the report said. The government and the foreign ministry believe that this approach is aimed at sending a message to Russia that Germany will not stand by and watch Russian oil pass through the Baltic Sea. The move comes after Germany seized the Eventine tanker, which was carrying 100,000 tons of Russian oil under the Panamanian flag. As a reminder of Germany's seizure of this tanker, one of the favorite routes of the Russian shadow fleet is the Baltics. Since the shadow fleet follows a secret route and does not use automatic identification systems transponders, the Baltics are seen as a paradise for such Russian ships. But there are also some very important NATO actors in the region who are working against Russia's clandestine illegal maritime activities. One of them is Finland. If you remember, the Helsinki government uncovered a very critical scandal about what Russia was really doing in the Baltics behind the backdrop of its maritime activities with its shadow fleet. This happened before the end of 2024. The Helsinki government announced that it had seized a tanker carrying Russian oil in the Baltic Sea on suspicion of being responsible for disruptions in submarine electricity and communication cables between Finland and Estonia. It was stated that the name of the Cook Islands flagship was Eagle S, and that the Finnish Coast Guard team boarded the oil tanker and towed the ship to Finnish territorial waters. Robin Lardo, director of the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation, stated at a press conference that they were investigating a very large sabotage and that the anchor under the ship caused damage. The Finnish Customs Service also confirmed that the cargo on board had been seized, and customs officials said they believed the ship in question belonged to Russia's shadow fleet of old tankers, allegedly used by Russia to evade sanctions imposed by Western countries on the sale of Russian oil. In addition to Finland, we will also talk about the measures Estonia has taken in the region in response to the resurgence of Russia's shadow fleet as a threat in the Baltics. Estonia has been conducting naval patrols in the region due to growing suspicions following the interruption of the connection of the S-Link 2 power grid with Finland and 4 telecommunication cables in the Baltic Sea. The Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs shared a post on its social media account regarding the increasing suspicion of sabotage following the interruption in the power grid. The ministry confirmed that the Estonian Defense Forces have started patrolling with naval forces to protect the S-Link 1 submarine cable, and emphasized that the naval forces of his country will be constantly vigilant against such unacceptable activities of the shadow fleet. Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur also confirmed that they have decided to send their navy close to S-Link 1 to defend and secure the energy connection with Finland. In response to Estonia's strategic moves against the Russian shadow fleet, some military sources close to Moscow have suggested that what happened in the Baltics could have been caused by the mistakes of the ship's crew or captains. But the damage to underwater infrastructure has become so frequent that it is hard to believe that it was an accident or captain's error. In particular, military experts do not consider the dragging of ships' anchors on the seabed to be accidents. In addition to experts, the EU has also argued that this situation in the Baltics is not an accident. Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, said on her social media account that these incidents reveal the threats to the B infrastructure. She pledged to ensure the protection of Europe's critical infrastructure, including submarine cables. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Kaja Kallas said the incident was the latest in a series of suspected attacks on critical infrastructure. Callas emphasized that the suspicious ships are part of Russia's shadow fleet, which threatens security and the environment while financing Russia's war budget. Kaja Kallas also mentioned that they will propose further measures, including sanctions to target this fleet. The High Representative noted that there is currently no risk to the security of electricity supply in the region. The NATO wing has also reacted to the state of concern that Russia's shadow fleet has created in the Baltics. NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte condemned any attack on critical infrastructure in connection with the disruption of the power grid between Finland and Estonia and telecommunications cables in the Baltic Sea. Mark Rutte had made a statement on his social media account at the time of the escalation of events regarding the allegations that Russia was behind the interruptions in the connection of the electricity grid between Finland and Estonia and the telecommunication cables in the Baltic Sea. Mark Rutte also emphasized that NATO was following the investigations conducted by Estonia and Finland and was ready to provide support. NATO is trying to find a solution to the problem of the Russians shipping oil products through the shadow fleet. For nearly 12 months, at least 3,100 refueling or bunkering operations involving shadow tankers were observed off the coast of the European member states of the United Kingdom and Norway. According to KS, the largest shadow fleet refueling activity, accounting for 45% of the total activity observed with an average of 9 tankers per day, was seen in the waters off Malta and Greece. The Laconian Gulf in southern Greece has become a hub in the oil supply chain where cargoes are exchanged between ships. NATO has repeatedly intervened in these areas as the shadow fleet has increased its shipping activities. Off the southern coast of NATO member Greece, tankers carrying Russian oil were reportedly pushed into the Mediterranean by naval exercises in the area where cargo is normally exchanged. The drills were an obstacle to Russia's growing shadow fleet and oil shipments by sea. Following such operations, the authorities had observed the disappearance of Russian tankers belonging to the shadow fleet that had flocked to the region. The shadow fleet tankers that had fled the region were seen clustered towards the south after the exercises. The exercises managed to displace tankers in international waters 6 nautical miles off the coast of Laconia, southeast of the Peloponnese Islands. Of course, in addition to operational blockades, Russia's shadow fleet is also being battered by sanctions. The EU has targeted the shadow fleet by adopting the 16th sanctions package against Russia. If we take the 16th sanctions package specifically, we can see that 74 additional ships belonging to Russia are included in the restrictions. This brings the total number of ships listed in the sanctions package to 153. These ships are part of the shadow fleet or contribute to Russia's energy revenues. The EU does not want Russia to continue oil shipments with its illegal shadow fleet in order to boost its war economy. The measures in the 16th sanctions package therefore include a new listing criterion targeting those who support the operation of unsafe oil tankers. The package includes a ban on the provision of goods, technology, and services for the completion of LNG projects in Russia, which would also apply to crude oil projects in Russia, such as the Vostok oil project. The EU probably prioritizes oil, the most important resource for Putin, much more in the new sanctions package. In the new package, the European side has decided to completely ban the temporary storage of Russian crude oil or petroleum products in EU ports or free zone procedures, which have so far been allowed if they meet the price ceiling and are destined for a third country. The 16th package extends the existing software ban to restrict the export, supply, or provision of oil and gas exploration software to Russia. Besides the EU, even China has had enough of Russia's shadow fleet. One of the Beijing regime's largest port operators has banned U.S.-sanctioned Russian oil tankers from docking at its docks in East China's Shandong province. Ships on the U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctions list are now banned from docking, unloading cargo, or receiving services. The decision was one of the toughest Chinese measures against Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin's shadow fleet, which has been trying to circumvent sanctions. The Shandong Port Group, which will no longer allow Russian oil ships to enter under the historic decision, operates ports in Rizhao, Yantai, and Qingdao. The ban imposed by the Chinese state-owned Shandong Port Group, which operates this critical network of ports in Shandong province, caused outrage. The region's many refineries are major importers of foreign oil. But as we mentioned, with this ban, Russia will no longer send its ships to this port for oil deliveries. There were important comments from China about this decision. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun said he had no information about the Shandong port ban, but more generally emphasized that China stands firmly against the U.S.'s illegal unilateral sanctions and its long-term jurisdiction, which has no basis in international law or the UN Security Council's authorization. Despite China's ambiguous statements on this issue, the Beijing regime's acting in line with Washington's doctrine has severely shaken Moscow's financial scale. According to Kapler, a provider of data analytics for commodity markets, at least 8 large crude oil tankers subject to U.S. sanctions docked at these ports last month, each with a capacity of 2 million barrels carrying mostly Iranian oil. The OFAC list also included ships from what Washington calls the shadow fleet, which is engaged in sanctions-busting activities to transport oil from Iran, Venezuela, and Russia. With Russia deprived of the Shandong port, which is a huge economic contributor, one wondered which direction Putin's shadow fleet would take. Another point of curiosity was how the relationship between Russia and China would evolve after this ban decision. In fact, there was no severe crisis between the two countries after the Chinese ban on the shadow fleet. Probably the Russian wing again let the shadow fleet sail in China's backyards. In short, it seems that Russia is not going to give up oil shipments with its shadow fleet despite the latest blocking efforts by Panama, as well as NATO, the EU, the UN, and even China. However, Panama's latest move to blacklist 128 shadow fleet tankers in the total of more than 200 tankers will force the Kremlin to think deeply about this issue. Putin may decide to move the shadow fleet towards the Baltics in the future. But here, too, important European actors, such as Germany and Baltic states like Estonia, are on full alert against the Russian shadow fleet. And in the Scandinavian territories, there are incredible efforts by Finland to block the shadow fleet. So the space for Putin's dark fleet is shrinking more and more every day. Thank you for watching.